And hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Most Important Conversations. I'm here with Jenna. We're talking about relationships as usual. And Jenna, you and I were just having an interesting off-camera conversation about this phenomenon that has been emerging now for, I guess, I don't know when it started. Maybe you know, but this sort of bro culture, uber masculinity explosion that's been going on at least for a handful of years, maybe 5-6 years, something like that, maybe more.
At least 10 for sure. Yeah.
10. Okay. So I wasn't really aware of it when it first started. We were kind of conversing about, so what's at the source of it? I mean, we recently had the re-election of Donald Trump, and they're saying a lot of the people who really pushed that over the edge for him were these young men. This term, young men, I keep hearing it everywhere. And I'm like, why are young men so, why are you mad? Like, why are you so pissed off? Like, I don't understand,
Here's a cookie.
What's with this? I remember when I was a quote unquote young man, I don't feel that old yet, but I never remember having this kind of angst. I just don't. I remember being, optimistic about life and what I was going to create and the possibilities. And, I just want to say one thing before we really dig in that, one of the things that we always talk about in the whole life architecture program at TMIC is that perception is reality, not the reverse, that reality governs perception. Now, they do dance together, but the real power that we have as human beings, as creators, is to intentionally transform our perception. For those who are religious people who might be watching our show, if you're an adherent to the Christian religion, there's even a verse in the Bible that says to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, which means that one can transform oneself by renewing their mind. So we have power over our mind, over our perception, and therefore the reality we create. So when I was younger, I always thought that whatever my life became, it was my choice and it was based on my actions, and it was not anyone else's fault, the way or direction my life went. Right. So now bringing it back to today, or even the last 10 years, what's this phenomenon where suddenly all of these quote unquote young men can only relate to themselves as victims, can only relate to themselves as society has done me wrong, society has kicked me out, I have no options. Because to me, that's a belief. Like, if you believe you have no options, you have no options. If you believe you have options, then you will have options. I mean, to me, it's that simple. So
but then there's a lot of data to support it that then will fuel what they're seeing, to fuel that relationship to reality. They're like, see, and then they're all growing together. And they're like, oh yeah, see, which is creation going in the wrong
confirmation
direction.
bias.
Yeah, the confirmation.
Yeah, it's confirmation bias, right?
Yeah. You
see what you believe, you see what you are, not absolutely, like we all have the ability to transform and change, but you see what you are in that moment, and you see what you believe. And so if you want to be a victim, you're going to find all of the evidence in your experiential reality for why you're a victim. And so I don't know what precipitated this sudden explosion of the pissed off young men movement, which has become the bro culture. And now we even have older men who are kind of like coming alongside some of these younger men. And they're like, yeah, me too. Like there's something weird going on, and I don't personally identify it. Yeah,
it's someone's fault. Like, I mean, that's what I see. My brother very much is part of this, but he's got into conspiracy theories. So it's like, because of this, it's because of this, it's because of this. And again, there's no room for personal responsibility in that conversation about what do you want to do because of this. It's like the learned hopelessness, the phenomenon of learned hopelessness, where I think that's a big part of it. I was supposed to get a job, and then I'd get a wife, and hence it coming back to that narrative. And then I would know what to do. But now she's not dating me, and and I can't buy a house, and I know, which is actually that's some pretty good learned helplessness about there. Like, even with the amount of money I'm making, I can't put a down payment on a house. That would fuel this helplessness. So I think helplessness mixed with the noise is a big part of it.
Before we started today about sort of this feral human way of being, right? So let's talk about that in relationship to this for a second. And then I want to talk about what, how this sort of learned helplessness, victimage of this bro culture, this victim masculinity. Let's stop calling it bro culture.
Yeah.
Let's call them victim masculinity, because that's really what it is. I mean, you're huddling together with your bros because you feel like the world's against you. You wouldn't be doing that otherwise. You'd be a strong, independent, assertive, creative person who's actually making a way for the life you want to create. And instead, they're huddling together like pack animals.
Feral.
Defending against the rest of the world. So talk about, what you were saying on that, this feral thing.
Yeah. So we have our survival state. And so when humans are feral, so you have your feral self and I have my feral self. And in my ontological coach training, they talked about survival mechanism. In psychotherapy, they talk about defenses, subpersonalities. Anyway, the phenomenon's been named many things, but essentially we're mammals. And in our lowest form, we will become feral. And once that's activated, you will do violent things. You will blame, you won't think about the well-being of another person. You're just driven by this selfish survival need. And everyone has at some point felt that way, whether you're in traffic or someone took the thing off the sale rack and you just or your phone company overcharged you. It's that like rush of adrenaline. That's your mammal part that's saying, fight, flight, freeze. But a lot of the time it's fight. In this case, with the victim masculinity, blaming your fault, and then just looped in, because the problem with being in survival state is you're running or you're fighting. But in our highest form, we're online, we're present, we have more of our faculties available to us. But because it's a fake survival, there's no actual threat when the phone company overcharges you. Right. You are flying off the handle. Because in a real survival circumstance, say there's I was in a natural disaster, I was in an F3 tornado, I got more present. I didn't flip into this feral, selfish mode. I was expanded and focused at the same time. So I can speak from that experientially. When people are in fake survival, like you did this, it's in their head. When they're in their head and then their ego, there's no presence to balance that feral mammal response.
Yeah.
So
it happened.
You have these people. What's that?
No, I was going to say, just to interject there, it happened the other day. I was driving into a parking lot to go to the grocery store, and I pull up behind an SUV that is stopped, and I didn't know exactly what was going on. There's a woman driving the SUV, and I kind of go, what's going on here? And I kind of drive around. And as I start to drive around, this man gets out of the car in front of the SUV, and he's, probably in his 50s. And well, I don't want to be, he's driving sort of like a sort of souped up hot roddy kind of thing that, feels a little bit like, to me, like my midlife crisis toy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, he comes out and he goes up to the woman in the SUV. So I guess she had run into his car. And, but we were in a parking lot, so she couldn't have been going that fast. Anyway, and he goes up to the window and he starts slamming on the window and screaming and swearing at her. And then he, gets back in the car. Now I drive around and I'm looking kind of at the bottom of his car. I'm like, I don't even see any damage. Like maybe there's a little scratch, nothing dramatic. There wasn't even a dent. But so he had this emotional reaction.
Yep.
And as I'm driving by him, he's sitting in the car, and I just put my window down and I look at him and I'm like, giving him that look like, hey man, chill the hell out. Like you are overreacting and I see you. And I pause and I stop right in front of him, and I'm just giving him this look, and he starts fingering me and swearing and all this. And I just put my window up and I just drive away. But it's sort of, and then he went into the parking lot and had his meltdown or whatever happened. Yeah. I don't know. But it reminds me of what you're talking about, like this overreaction.
Well, I'm important. And so where this victim masculinity really inflames is I'm important and you should know I'm important. You hit my car. I'm important. Like it's this, it's the protector of insecurity. I don't feel good enough. I'm afraid I'm not good enough. You hit my car, so that's the driving force, whether people use that language or not. everyone wants to be important. And if they don't feel important, if they feel like they don't matter, this survival mechanism, feral human thing can come up. And we all have it. So we have the ability to tame and train it and be like, who do you really want to be right now? Manage the adrenaline. But in our society, we're in like busy. There's so many things. I mean, I like caffeine though. Like I drink caffeine. Like the busy and the hectic and the phone and the this and the stimulus makes us more primed to lose ourselves and become feral, become selfish, become greedy, become really ugly versions of what human beings can be. And it's normalized. So that guy decided to lean in. So in another instance, you could have looked at him and he could have dehypnotized. Well, shit.
Yeah, it felt like he was in sort of a trance.
Yes, because you're in a chemical hypnosis. And the more you do it, the more you engage in it, the more you become that. And we're talking about choice. And then we're talking about how this relates to relationships, because, you know, if you're in a relationship with somebody who goes feral, it's really good to know. And I'll talk to my clients like, hey, you know, it's actually really, when I work with women who go feral, but they go feral in sneaky ways, like they're like cutting and they'll say something in a certain way, or they'll do something, like they're methodical sometimes about it. And I'm like, you're kind of being a cunt. Like you're kind of, I tell them, I'm like, he's responding according to your behavior. Like you guys are both participating in this because you're both feral. Divorce, the worst. I help people not to, let's just get calm. We use the word sober or calm or centered. But anyway, we're watching a societal survival mechanism, a societal feral experience, which was also COVID, right? We talked about that last time too, like this, I'm not safe. So therefore, here are all of my defense mechanisms to cope with not feeling safe. I don't know my future. I don't feel good enough. I don't feel loved. Women don't like me, or whatever their thing is. But it's blame, 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 blame. And we're talking about finding your source back at your source. Like blame will never work. Even the bro culture, the hustle, a lot of my clients have got success and they have the wife and they have the thing. That's what's I've seen all of it. They have all the things and they're still not happy.
Well, it's because the outside is never going to make us happy. So this is the classic human mistake that, for whatever, you know, they say history repeats itself. This is why, because
watching it,
we are constantly looking outside of ourselves in the world of effects and thinking if we can play whack-a-mole and change the effects I'm experiencing, that I will be happier, more powerful, more peaceful, more creative, more content, or whatever. And it never, ever, ever, ever has ever worked. It's never worked. I don't know why we keep going to this. Well, I do know why.
Well, and that's the power and control versus actually being empowered. Control isn't the power. This is the power.
Well, but here's the thing. No one will ever control all of the variables out there anyway. Even if you think you can, you're never going to. So you're playing a losing game. And it actually just makes you more feral, more frustrated, more feeling like a victim. Nothing's ever working, but let me try and control even more variables. Let me try and control even more variables. And incidentally, this is the thing that leads people around the world into conservative movements. Okay. So this idea, I just want everyone to think about this. I'm not, by the way, I would have, for most of my life, I would have been a conservative voter. I was a conservative voter because I was economically conservative or fiscally conservative. And that was always important to me. And in the recent 10, 15 years, I drift in that this whole notion of drifting towards sort of conservative values is directly connected to an attempt to go back to a time when we felt we had it all together, when we felt that we were in control, when life was good, the good old days, right? So there's this mythology that we drift into, thinking that the past has answers for our future. And I just want to say to everybody, the past has zero answers for the future. The past is maybe a fond time, maybe a time when you reminisce, but the present and the future are where we have to apply our creative powers to create the future we want, not drift back to the past and consume or vacuum up or drudge up old sort of models and structures. And that's why history, we've evolved from it. I mean, if everyone's like, gee, history repeats itself, it's because of this. It's because we go into the past and we drag it into our future thinking it has solutions for us. It doesn't. Right now, we live in a moment where AI is about to take over the trajectory of how we work, how we live. We have global movements of people moving from country to country to country. We have expats, digital nomads. We have so many things that never existed even 20 years ago, let alone 50. So what is the 1950s going to teach me about this moment in time? Nothing. Right? So the only reason people go into their past is because it's knowable, it's predictable, and that makes us feel safe. And when we feel insecure in the present, looking at an uncertain, unknowable future, we think, oh my gosh, the solution is to go back to the thing I know. That's how conservative movements are born, right? Versus, and that's trying to control the world of effects. What we're talking about is source or being at cause. So we are the cause of everything happening in our life in the sense that we get to choose from day to day to day to day who we will be and what that being will do. And so that's a place of power. But coming back to sort of where I started with that, that's scary for people to know themselves. You know, Nietzsche said it, Socrates said it, every major philosopher in the world has said, know yourself, do the work. Rarely do people do.
Well, what does that mean? Do the work. You know what I mean? It's like not need something outside of you for the validation to move forward, to actually begin to participate with reality through thought, through action, through noticing without attachment. Oh, okay, I'm gonna start doing push-ups in the morning, and then the effect will be my upper body will get stronger. Or if I do too much too soon, I might get an injury. So there's this participation with creation that we're doing all the time that allows us, the fear of the ego mind is that they're not enough. So they're always seeking to be more. But the truth is when you drop in, you're able, and this is the spiritual principles, you're able to know your enoughness because you're now where the enoughness lives, which is now.
Right.
It's never over there or back there. I had a funny example of thinking backwards. If you look at songs from every decade, you remember the hit songs. And then so you could say, oh, the 20s, that was a great time for music. The only thing that survived was the good shit.
Right.
There was a bunch of bad shit. There's a bunch of mediocre songs, but the remembrance of these great songs, and it's just a way of like seeing it in this really low stakes way of like, you remember the good ones. You remember the stability, but you don't remember this and you don't remember that. You don't remember that you had to chop wood to make the fire all the time. Now it's fun to do every so often. It's really good for men with their testosterone to like move that energy, but all the time, do you want to do that? Anyway, so evolution, to look at the data and then get present and evolve from this state in evolution of where we are now, which is presence. But that self-trust to trust your enoughness is what's really fundamentally missing for so many people. Everything's outside. I need this in order. The authority is outside. The validation. Very few people have the inner courage to do something without looking stupid or this or that, you know? So anyway, so like at a smaller, more relatable form, that's kind of how it shows up for people. Yeah.
So, I mean, I want to make sure that the listeners and viewers feel like they can leave with something that's, you know, it's so right now we're observing sort of the what is I would call the breakdown that's led to this bro culture, led to a large swath of, not all, of course, there's men out there who are strong, powerful creators of their own world, of their own life, right?
But they're quiet about it.
But they're quiet about it. Well, this is the irony of the whole thing, right? And I actually feel like men who are either practicing that or are firmly in that way of being need to not be quiet about it. And I'm not talking about in a braggadocio way, but I feel like we need to start sharing with the other subset of society that's this sort of grieved victim bro culture, sort of thing, where it's all about through extroverted activities demonstrating my bigness and my power, which we know only comes from a smallness inside, quite frankly, because I think there's a Chinese proverb that talks about how fools never stop talking and wise men rarely speak.
Yeah.
Right. And so you can see this bro culture as this foolish, never stop talking about how big and how great and how manly and how amazing I am.
This is great because you asked me before we started, how does this relate to dating or how does this relate to relationships? And I was talking to a friend. I should really record all of my calls with my friends about dating right now. But I said that, someone's insecure when they over talk about, I have this, I have that. And now there's like showing it. There's like, but honestly, they don't. Like, it's like the best way to tell someone's insecure is if they talk about all of these things a lot, and not only just talk about it, they really check in to see if you heard them. Like, I have this car. Did you hear that? Because if you don't respond, they'll like check back. Well, did you hear that I said that? Like, because you don't seem too impressed. I'm like, because I am not. Welcome to meeting someone who doesn't care. But I care if it's an expression of what they think is like, oh my God, I love this car, and it lights them up, and they worked for it and all that kind of stuff. But to say I'm important because I have this thing, or I'm important because I've done this thing, or like look at my biceps or whatever, Shania Twain, that don't impress me much. Like at the end of the day, women, if bro culture is wondering what women want, they need to look at it more, because it's not those things, right? They want to feel like you know who you are, like you're a safe person to be with. And this isn't the nice boy bro culture thing. It's just like women really want someone who they're not going to have to fluff.
Yeah.
That they're not going to have to work hard to make sure you feel okay.
Yeah.
That is exhausting.
There's a great scene. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Spring Breakers. It came out I don't know, 12.
I doubt that would have caught my eye, but okay.
No, so Spring Breakers, it's got James Franco.
Oh, okay. I like that.
And he plays this drug dealer, arms dealer kind of guy.
Oh, okay.
But that's not what the story's about. It's about him, trying to kind of attract the attention of these young spring breaker girls in Florida, and sort of the whole, and Selena Gomez is in it. It's kind of but anyway, there's this scene. So I want everyone to go Google this. If you want to see really what the underbelly of bro culture looks like, go watch the scene, and you can find it. It's easily on YouTube. And the scene's called "Look at All My Shit." and so there's this scene in the movie, and he's in his bedroom in his house in Florida, and he's got these 19-year-old girls or whatever who are there on spring break in the bedroom, and they're just kind of smoking marijuana and laying around. And James Franco, and he's got like grills in his teeth, and he's got, and he's just going around his room, and he's going, look at all my shit. Look at all my shit. I got guns. Look at my guns. I got so many guns. And he's like, look at my shit. I got money. I got marijuana. Look at all my shit. And he just keeps saying that, right? And he's like trying to impress these girls. And it is a classic scene. Whenever I hear bro culture and the things that are going on right now, I get this vignette of this movie scene in my head, because it's it's so ridiculous. The scene is intentionally so ridiculous, but it's the energy that the bro culture is really exhibiting. It's just like almost at the level of pathetic.
It would have been fun to watch him prepare for that. I love watching actors and just like see how well they capture a character in that moment, and their energy and their inflections and all that kind of stuff. I just love that stuff, because actors are creators, right? Like they're like, I'm going to create this moment. Yeah. But they'll look at my stuff. Now, on the flip side, I'm going to say there's nothing wrong with stuff when it's from an authentic place. Like, here is my house. I live in a house and I have a car and I have a thing. That's cool. It's authentic, but to think that your worth is based on your stuff is
Yeah.
fundamental problem, because then, okay, if the economy changes, if your stuff devalues,
Disappears.
planned obsolescence, right? You're less than. So yes, your
Or,
frantic need to keep that alive is going to keep going in that direction of lack of power.
it's something you just said, though, made me think of something. So you said that this bro culture has been kind of around for roughly 10 years.
Yeah, because I'm in
right?
I was in internet marketing, so I saw it in the idea of like get 10K months, 100K months, keep going. Like you can, like, it just very hustle, bro. Also like integrity, sort of whatever, as long as you can make the sale, like charge your number, charge the number that people will buy, keep calling them. Like, so my experience of bro culture really came from internet marketing. So that's
okay. So let's go back
experience.
10 years ago. So we're talking about, 2014, and maybe now it was only 5-6 years before that we had the biggest economic collapse since, the Great Depression. I have friends who were multi-millionaires, had yachts. They had, in some case, dozens of homes that they owned, and they lost everything when that went down. And so there's a part of me that's starting to wonder if bro culture is a phenomenon that emerged out of many men who kind of lost everything. Now, they wouldn't be young men today, but just as a cultural phenomenon, I'm wondering if it's sort of this sort of mentality began, and it's now, morphing into what it's become today. But this sort of idea that I've lost everything, I don't have a place in the world, I don't know who I am, and therefore I'm going to huddle together. I'm just speculating. I have no idea, but it is interesting to look at that trajectory.
It is. I see it as, from my vantage point of the internet culture, of internet selling stuff, being able to 10x this and do that and blah, blah, tech world, all that kind of like make a lot of money. Here's my jet. Here's my this. Here's my that. The hustle. I think it was just the new corporate CEO. I think it was just an online corporate CEO. I think there's just
this is unsustainable, though.
It is unsustainable, but I think my version of it is seeing it like, instead of this world of like work up the corporate ladder, it's like, screw that, make your money over here. So I think it just diverted attention to a different form of ladders and being at the top.
Well, and not that there's anything wrong with entrepreneurialism and all of that. As a matter of fact, I think entrepreneurialism is a powerful form of human creativity and human expression. To be able to envision and to imagine something that doesn't exist, and to have the self-confidence to be able to step forward into that unknown and to say, I'm going to create this, and to do the work to create it. But I think that that's different than what I'm describing. Is I want to assert my creativity as a powerful creator in the world and actually create something, versus stacking up the, it reminds me of like, Mayweather. He used to drive around in a car full of money, like literally stacked with money. And it was like sort of this identity that was being expressed.
Yeah. And so and then I would tie that, we talked about the hustling, and so to put it back into relationships, like I've created, I called bullshit on a bunch of societal metrics a long time ago, like work hard, get the thing, and then what? Work, like do this, and then what? And then it was like, okay, but what's the then what? And then I created my life backwards from that, using spiritual ontological principles and human psychology and working with my own emotions. All of that's necessary to do something like that. However, I see people are busy, work hard. You still have to work hard, still have to do stuff, but it's out of balance. And we talked about productivity and busyness, but the hustle culture from bro culture of like, dude, I did the 12-hour day, and then I'm this, and then I've got this many leads, and I've got this, and I've got that, versus actual efficacy or actual magnetic energy or actual, I work in a very magnetic way. Like I'm really good at what I do. More people come. I go speak somewhere, more people come. I'm not doing this like numbers game. Like kind of like frantic survival mode. So I see it in the hustle culture. And to me, that isn't freedom. To me, that isn't wealth. If you're working all the time, if you need to make this much this quarter because your expenses are so inflated because you got to prove to everybody that you're special, that is another form of like powerlessness at the end of the day, because you've created your own system of having to keep up with it. So
Yeah.
where I'm more interested in like, what's actual success? Like, what does your life look like? How do you want your day to go? And then working, then do the busy, then work for that. But too many people are just blindly chasing this idea of like, once I have this, then, which is the motto of the ego. But when I see in dating, I'm like, I don't want someone who's just constantly working and constantly trying to get to the next thing. I want to live an awesome life now.
Right.
So that's where it becomes a bit of an issue because so ingrained, especially in their 40s, right? Like it's like in younger.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, also it's a delicate balance, and I can speak from my own experience because I think I've gone through, I'm this phase. I've had this experience of that hustle culture. If I think back, at least 10 years, I was really in it. Actually, I was really in the hustle culture. I got wrapped up into it as well. It's frankly only in the last 7 or 8 years that I started to kind of extricate myself from that, because I did the same kind of exercise you're talking about. Instead of this, do have be or have do be situations, like when I have the money, the car, the house, the whatever, then I will do these things and then I will be happy, be content, be whatever. The reverse is what I started to really lean into, the be, do, have. It's like, okay, who am I as a being? But it's been a challenge. It was always a challenge because I've been an entrepreneur now for 20 years, been involved in various, tech initiatives and projects and stuff like that. And the entrepreneurial world is even more out there than the sort of career world, because you really are, you really have no safety net. Like you really have to step up every day and have the confidence and the assurity of self and your ability to create in the world and make something happen. And you have to have that self-discipline and all of that. And it's easier said than done. And so I partly wonder if the hustle and the bro culture that we now are seeing was born out of sort of, I'm literally piecing together, but it's interesting to look at, the economy collapses, 2008, people lose jobs, people lose houses, people lose their investments, their retirement, whatever, depending what age you're in. And a lot of people jumped in at the same time, like you're saying, the internet, social media is evolving around this very same time. And it made it possible for people to walk away from their failed life that just collapsed. And I don't mean failure like you're a failure, but it collapsed. The system failed us. And they entered into the entrepreneurial world. And I wonder if that sort of this hustle bro culture thing that we're now dealing with emerged out of all the people that entered the entrepreneurial sphere at that time to try to make their own go of it, because social media made it possible. I could now sell products. I could become an influencer. I could, all these things.
We had a world marketplace.
We ended a world marketplace. And so there's a part of me that feels like it may have even come from a good place, like unintentionally, where it came from, to try to motivate and spur people and trade confidence with each other. And
I think it did, because authentically, I will say this: I was a female, and so she's like, feminine energy. I work in rhythm with my productivity. I can't go like 8 a.m. And then when I look at hormones, so I've become really fascinated with hormonal optimization. The testosterone of like I've watched men just thrive by actually putting themselves towards something and then accomplishing it. And then that testosterone boost that actually really fuels them. And it's really authentic for them. So instead of trying to make them like me, I'm like, hey, relax. Like, no, they're them and I'm me. So allowing everyone to have their different energy forms and how that shows up is thriving for them. So I think authentically there is a purpose. I think people are searching for purpose in that went rogue. Like it's like, purpose, drive, you can create your life. Look at, like, you can have some autonomy here. Look at how that CEO job might get lost or whatever. Like, I think it came from an authentic place of like, you can create what you want. Yeah.
Which I think is really inspiring. And I think that I'm literally just extemporaneously kind of reflecting on this, which is what I love about our conversations. It's just wherever it goes, right? But I'm just thinking about it. I'm thinking like,
we'll see how it goes for the viewers.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they track with it, right? But I'm just saying, like, I think it came from a good place where men wanted to connect with other men, especially in the entrepreneurial space. Because when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have community
Yeah,
in
it's
the same way
isolating.
that you do, like in
Yep.
say, a corporate office environment, right? You just don't have community in the entrepreneurial world. So you have to create that too. And so it can be very lonely. And so I think that it came from a place of wanting to connect to other men who are on the same journey, encouraging each other. I think you make a good point, that testosterone boost that men get off of the win when they're winning.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But what's
No.
happened is, I think that it's now gone to a place of when things don't work out, it's all of your fault out there.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the
this empowering part.
insecurity.
Yeah.
Insecurity to me is like, there's the pandemic, but like insecurity and shame, the worst.
Yeah.
Insecure humans, we said, like, insecure people are the worst because they have nothing to lose and they're going to blame, and they're worse. They're at their worst. But the thing is, the security will never come from that person loving you or having this in the account. Like, that's the whole delusion of it that people are buying into because they're fearful. But anyway, like, when we look at relationships, we look at our relationship to ourselves, we look at becoming creators again. If we could come from a place of, I'm already enough, there's nothing to make me enough. Now, what do I want to do? Now, what do I want to create?
What can I create from there?
What could I create from here? If we had an ability to Men in Black the world and just be like, boop, okay, now you're enough. You're enough, and you don't have to do this thing over there, which is consumerism culture, which is a whole other, like, industrialized problem, after effect, consequence of humans' effect of being products, of being an industrial culture. So it's when I wrote my book, it's not your fault and nothing's wrong with you. That's why it's like, you've been told the thing is out there. You've been told, once I do this, then once I get the A, once I get to this, once I graduate, once I get the wife, the husband, we've been told that. So then when people are operating from that system, it's not that weird. However, it's just not working. So we can just stop and go, whoops, that didn't work.
Let's start over.
Start now. And so all of our conversations are really about starting now, and how that relates to relationship, is well, one, obviously our relationship to ourselves, and then our relationship to society, but our relationship to, like, satisfaction and your day. Who do you want to be today? Sometimes when I work with clients and they're just so in that feral, like, and when you're an ontologist, you look at people's language to reveal their state of being, right? So, like, he did this to me. How could he do this to me? I'm like, ooh, I've got a feral human, like, so now I know how to take that, but like, and then I can sometimes dehypnotize them by being like, well, who do you want to be today? Yeah. They're gone. They're gone, and, like, you're upset. So, like, they have that power over you. And they're like, oh, no, they don't have power over me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know.
I don't want them to have power over me. And then suddenly, like, okay, who do I want to be today? And now they're, I kind of want to have a good day, and I want to be present with my kids, and I want to take that walk. And do the stuff you need to do. It's not about just, like, sitting on a park bench like Eckhart Tolle. It really is just more like, who do I want to be today? And being able to ask that question, but actually listen to it.
And act from
go from there. Yeah. Right. The doing from being place is very productive. And we've had these conversations, is actually more productive than doing. The problem is balance, right? Doing. And then there's just like, you're just like, where are you even going? What? That's what a lot of people do. They get so busy. They're just like, I don't even know why I'm doing this anymore. It's just so 4-lane highway, right? And so I say to people, there's a 4-lane highway, but, like, we're building this dirt road, but it's actually where you want to go. So maybe it's slower, but just because everyone's going here fast, that's what a lot of people get caught in, right? That momentum.
So here's a thought. So Maslow's pyramid of needs, right? So we've got sort of the base level, which is sort of the foundations of life, food, shelter, clothing.
Oh, security is the next one.
Security is above it, right? Yeah. And then security is above it. And then very few people get through the security level. They just kind of find themselves trapped
Yeah. Month to month,
self-efficacy
credit
is
card. Yeah.
yeah, self-efficacy is way at the top. So it's easier said than done. And part of the reason is that when we're in that sort of feral mindset that you're talking about, we are, we're constantly alert for all the threats all around us all the time, and we're looking for the threats. So if you're looking for it, you're going to find it. And then also we get a neurochemical payoff. The brain sort of, until trained and mastered, our brain will lean towards the negative, seeing the threat, seeing what's at risk, seeing, it's just easy
Just
for people
because
to
of
go there.
survival.
Yeah. And we get this payoff to keep looking there and living from that place. So this is my setup for you. And I have a question. So this is to the women out in the world, because I think that women have an important role in helping the men who've dropped into this feral, reactive, egoic headspace, the hustle culture, the bro culture, whether you're in your 20s or you're in your 60s,
There's no
right?
age.
It's there,
It's
right?
there.
So, what would you advise and recommend to women of how can they help? It's almost like for those men who have fallen into this way of thinking and being, it's almost kind of similar in many ways to being its own sort of version of a cult. And so it's like, how do we get them out of that, mindset and way of being? Because there's a lot of women who are in relationship with men like this.
Yeah, it's tricky. Don't fight it. Don't prove anything. Don't try to fight. Like, oh, I believe this and I believe that. I think softness and joy and pleasure will dehypnotize people. Not like you have to like prostitute yourself in that way, but just like your own natural being of like, this is fun, this is sensual. This smells good. Here's the you go to like a dude's bachelor place, and which in my 20s is just hilarious to see what got the lawn chair over here and whatever, just like one mug of just like, this is all I need and that's all I need, which is cool. But then there's this like this energy of joy and pleasure that women have also lost, though, is the problem. Become a little masculinized and like fighting and proving and I'm independent, they don't lead with vulnerability. So I think the more authentic, it's great. It's a win-win. It's a 2-for-1 special. You become more authentic. You become more you become your more energy. You're good in your own energy. That feels good for you alone. And that is very recalibrating.
Right.
Again, from a mammal perspective, there's the concept of entrainment where you watch the birds all going together. So, and I learned this I was in a car accident, had chronic pain, blah, blah. Then I was a massage person. But when I had chronic pain, it was like, make the pain go away. Like destroy the knot in the muscle, like very masculine, kill the problem. Then I learned about nervous system entrainment, where no, relax your whole body. As I put my hands on their body gets the invitation to relax. And this is what's great about nervous system, that, people are misunderstanding what nervous system regulation means because it's becoming so hypey. But essentially, it's the safety. Because for most people, not all people, we have the luxury of safety, but we forget. And we're in the delusion that we're not safe. So I think the authentic woman wants to be authentic. She wants to be authentic anyway. And that's going to help men just sink in and not, like. That's
well, one thing that brings to mind is like, so I've read some different books around. I'm not an expert in deprogramming cults, but there's some great people speaking about it out there right now. And one of the things that really stood out to me in this literature of how sort of cults work, and you might be asking, what does cults have to do with how bro culture and hustle culture and all of that? Because a cult is just a paradigm, a way of being and entering into a belief system of how the world works.
Where they're right. And that's that.
Right. And usually in typical cults, you have sort of one apex sort of personality at the top that everyone defers their loyalty and their power to. But this is going to be a version of a sort of cult in a way where a lot of the people who are kind of trapped in this bro culture, hustle culture world are deferring to, it's not maybe one thought leader, but many thought leaders that they're diverting their power to, right? And they're not thinking for themselves. So coming back to what you were saying about what women can do about it. So what happens in sort of when people enter into an ontological trap in terms of understanding who they are is they have their real identity. And then there's this sort of new identity that comes on top of it, right? So this is the bro culture, hustle culture. I'm the big shot entrepreneur. I'm going to be a billionaire, all this stuff. And I did live in that space for a while. If I go back far enough, I mean, if I go back 14 years, I was totally buying into the early days of this. And then, I don't know, it was just various circumstances that extricated me from it. It was kind of woke up. It felt like I was in a trance, so I have empathy I have empathy for men who are in here. But one of the things that these cult experts, these psychiatrists who work with people to deprogram them say is you can't attack their belief system because their new identity is on the lookout for attack everywhere. Yeah.
Their Band-Aid, it's the Band-Aid holding them together. So you don't take their Band-Aid off. That's not loving. So I think we've entered into two different worlds. To me, it's like the man in your life. These are ways for women to be with your partner, and whether masculine, feminine, whatever the relationship nature of that could do that. But from like a global perspective to, not attack the defense mechanism. It's the Band-Aid holding the person together. And that's where a lot of people are at fault. That they're mistaken. They're like, oh, it's wrong. This is wrong. It's like an abusive man. Oh, can't you see he's abusing you? Can't you see he's abusing you? Right.
Yeah.
Yes. But I had a friend like this. It's all I know.
Yeah.
She stayed for another 10 years. It's all I know. I don't have the energy to leave. So the whole resourcing method I created is to create the resources to match the challenge. So once you have emotional ability, once you can start to sink in, once you can start to feel your feelings, then you could start to face life at life's level of challenge. But that's the same thing with what you're looking at with like, they don't know another way. If there was another way that was better, they might pop to it if they had the ability to get out of their ego of like, I'm right and I'm going to fight to the death because I'm right. And that's the problem with ego. But when somebody starts to get dehypnotized or their soul comes online or they're like, wait, what am I doing this for? And they're just like, what do I really want? They really come back online. They'll naturally come out of it. But when you can't attack the thing that is holding people together, you have to create the resources. Yeah.
But the thing I wanted to kind of come back to what you were saying a few minutes ago. So I was kind of setting it up is like, you can't attack the identity, but what you can do, and the women in relationship with men like this, and I think it's kind of what you were starting to lead towards. We were talking about, pleasure and being able to engage them at a different level, authenticity, right? And so whether it's a relationship you've had for a long time, or even if it's a new relationship, maybe you're just dating someone. So it's to remind them who they were, who they actually are underneath the identity of the hustle bro culture way of being. It's like, you were just talking about, people who've been in a relationship for a while when they were, in their early 20s or something like that. They had no money and no nothing, and it was fine. And you were in a relationship with them and you were chill about the whole thing. It was kind of an adventure. It was like, I didn't have a lot, but I was still fully alive. Right.
Yeah.
And then we get kind of enrolled into, these ways of being that become a form of hypnosis of we forget who we are. And so I guess what I'm saying is the women in the lives of these men can help them remember themselves. Don't attack the identity they're beholden to right now, but their real identity is under this fabricated thing that they are defending at all costs. And the way that you can dehypnotize someone is to reconnect them to their authentic self. And then they start asking the questions that you're bringing up. Wait a minute, why am I doing this? Like this isn't me. Like, why am I?
But they'll do it through entrainment. So my real advice is to not try to fix anybody.
Yeah.
Notice if they're a match for you or not, and then you decide to leave. Don't try to fix anybody, because if they can't entrain with you, if they don't make these authentic choices on their own because they see there's another way, maybe this is actually better, they'll think on their own.
Yeah.
do this all the time. I spent a weekend with somebody and he's like, you're so interesting. Like he was just like how I did time, how I don't like that anymore. How I wasn't willing, but like I was being a creator and suddenly allowed him to see. I wasn't trying to teach him to be a creator, and I wasn't like,
right.
my way is better than your way. Blue, blue,
You were
blue.
inviting him into something.
Just by being me. So the thing
Yeah.
is to not try, is to just be for you, which is again 2-for-1 special. That's what you want anyways as your own self. That if somebody can't entrain with you, you're going to have a hard time being in a relationship, because I think offline, 2 people being themselves together is the goal. So if they're so stuck in an identity, which is a survival mechanism, and they are just, they just need to be right, and they're just digging in their heels and they're bold, like dog with a bone, let go. Because you cannot fix that person. Right. That's just a totally different thing. I don't know if the internet's being weird, but no, being your authentic self would be the teaching. Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. So effectively, women can basically be authentically themselves, hold space, and invite the men in their life, whatever status, into this authentic way of being.
Yeah, but don't tolerate bullshit either. Like, if someone's being whatever, or like, like also, there's a way to speak up without fighting. There's a way to just say, I feel this way, and not need to be right, and not need you to, not to convince, but to just share.
There's this term that I hesitate to bring up, only because I think it's like so many terms these days, because of social media and the internet, it becomes overused and the meaning of it gets kind of perverted, and we don't really connect to where it originated. But this idea of toxic masculinity, I think, is actually an accurate term if we just take it on its as face value. There's healthy masculinity. There's men being men connecting to other men needing those sort of goals and those things to achieve, because it drives the testosterone, gives them, the men are very goal orientated. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But the toxicity has led us into this bro culture, this hyper masculinity, this hustle culture. It's where we're doing it for the wrong reasons. We're focusing more on doing than who we're being, and we lose ourselves in this whole thing. So I think toxic masculinity, even though it's thrown around and weaponized like so many terms are today, if we just step back and look at it, it's like, that's really what we're talking about here. Whether it's hustle culture, bro culture, or whatever, it's a version of masculinity gone sour. It's like gone in a direction
survival masculinity. That's the gross
survival masculinity. Yeah, maybe that's a better way of saying it.
Right. It's Vikings doing, like, I don't even watch those shows. The shit that people would do to conquer a thing. It's like evolve. If you're safe, and if you don't have to fight for your land, and you don't have to fight, you know what I mean? You can redirect the energy, but that survival energy makes people really gross and selfish. And at the end of the day, it's not satisfying. It's the belief is that if you just keep going, it's going to be there, but it never happens. And that's sort of the sad part is wherever they're going, it's not good anyway.
Yeah. Because wherever you go, there you are.
Fast,
as the saying goes, right?
It's just faster.
So,
just faster and more aggressively, and with like,
So I mean, that's, these aphorisms are kind of enlightening if you really step back. Wherever you go, there you are. So if you're in a toxic, reactionary, hostile place in yourself, just because you exactly. And you're just going to then walk around your bedroom with machine guns saying, look at all my shit. And I mean, nothing's really, you're not really tapped into any real power.
No. And that might be interesting to a 19-year-old that is also hypnotized into being liked by men and being picked by the alpha. And that gets old fast too. But you're not going to find someone who's a match for you.
Right.
Like in terms of genuine compatibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a conversation. I know there's a conversation going on in the culture right now. There are many people like the Jordan Petersons and the Andrew Tates and to a lesser, but still kind of same extent, the Joe Rogans, who have attracted a lot of the, bro culture people around that. And they're kind of giving them they're kind of validating the bro hustle culture and sort of, encouraging them along. At the end of the day, I just think if we come back to relationships, I don't know. I mean, I think there's women who tolerate that to a degree because maybe they don't know better.
No.
So I think women play such a huge
totally
role
playing
here.
into it, but they're conscious to it. They're at the end of it. But I see this a lot in the world of sexuality. So if let's say I'm with somebody sexually and like they just haven't learned some things, and whatever amount of women they were with before that just had no reference for their own pleasure and no reference for their own rhythm and never been with a man capable of that either. The guys have been just as frustrated that they were trying to do it right, but they're just trying to do it for their own pleasure. And so no woman has actually been like, hey, I don't like that. They're afraid of anyway. So I've seen it a lot in sexuality of just okay, this is what we're doing.
Just deal with it. Yeah.
This is sex. Okay.
Yeah. Don't know any different.
You do you. I'll figure it out. I see that a lot. But there's equal parts like the guy maybe watched porn and he thinks he's doing a good job, but no one's told. And then they're faking orgasm and like, so what are you going to do? Yeah. And then finally you're with somebody who I'm like, yeah, no, dude. No, it's hard. They don't love hearing that, but I also I'm not driven by, don't reject me. The best thing people can do in dating is not be worried about being rejected. You're going to want to be rejected by the people you're not a match for. So if like, you don't like me because I've said what I need, cool. That should be how we want it to be. So I see it a lot in that landscape, but then you take it out all over the place to tolerating everything. I work with a lot of women on seeing all the ways of don't rock the boat. Make sure, don't be a bitch. Make sure they like you. The good girl thing. Don't be difficult. The amount of men that are like, relax. Like, seriously, so all the time. It's like, I say,
and they're so not relaxed.
I say it to women and they laugh because they've been told this so many times when they're just saying their truth or saying something that matters. So relax. It's like, fuck you. Like,
very pejorative. Yeah.
So anyway, so yes, women have been dealing with it and a lot have just resigned, and it's a different survival mechanism of just play dead, like a certain level of just, I'm not even going to go there. So that's definitely a whole other show. But I help women deprogram from all of those unconscious, the offshoot of the toxic patriarchal culture of who you have to be to survive in that culture, which a lot of it is to be chosen and to be married. Still, that's in the programming. Be nice, be pretty, just go along with it. Make sure you get picked no matter what. So, it's still a thing. With some of the most successful, beautiful people, they're still driven by these programs.
Well, I think in wrapping up today, let's end on where each of us kind of, gives a perspective on where men or women who are dealing with this, would you call it survival masculinity? I like that.
Yeah, like it's the problem is the survival mode. The problem is the survival mode, and the identity is from a place of survival. Yes. Yeah,
I think that's a better term than toxic because nobody wants to be called toxic. Let's start with that. It's not exactly like but survival. I think everyone can say, I've experienced that before. I get that when I get into that mode. And so for men in this survival masculinity place, whether it's showing up as you're the hustler entrepreneur or the bro culture guy, whatever. My encouragement would be to kind of just slow down, take a step back and try to connect to the self that was you before you drifted into this lifestyle and this way of being. Do you, it's a sort of an introspective question. Do you remember that person? Do you feel really alive today like you did back then? Do you feel open to possibility like you did that back then? Do you feel like you have self-trust and autonomy to act like you did at one point in time? I mean, these men took an action to become an entrepreneur, or maybe they're not an entrepreneur and they're working a job, but they took this step into the bro culture, their hustle culture, into this moment, and they started to consume all this information, right? And so they were transformed not by the renewing of their mind, but by the, well, I guess they renewed their mind into a new way of being, but is that who you authentically are? And so I would encourage, men to actually just pause and ask themselves, do you remember those times? Do you remember who you were? And how does this new person you've become correlate at all to that person? And maybe try to go back and reconnect and start from that place again, because it's very easy for us to get enrolled and wrapped into, especially with social media, what everyone else is doing, and as social creatures, we tend to think, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. And this is, and we emulate. There are a lot of men out there who aren't playing this game, and they're literally living their best life because they're going at the pace that they want to go. They're creating what they want to create. They're not trying to look good, not trying to get validation from everyone else. They're connecting deeply to other men and women in friendships or romantic relationships. And you can have it all. There's no one says you can't. You're not a victim, and you don't need to lash out at the world. So I would encourage, men to look from that place. And then maybe you have a couple thoughts for the women who are, in relationship or interacting with, even if they're not in a relationship. I'm sure there's a lot of women who are like, gee, I'd like to date someone, but every guy I come across is in survival mode and I don't know where to go.
Yeah. I mean, that's been my dating life in the past summer. I'm like, there's a lot of really tired, working hard dudes, just like exhausted from, and some of them have just like been like, I guess this is what I'm supposed to do. And they're just doing it and they're doing the best that they can. So there's this other group of male experience that I've had front row seat to in terms of they're doing the best they can, knowing what they know. And then they're, if their best isn't good enough, their self-esteem takes a big hit for that. So I don't know. I think it's a hodgepodge of things. I would say I'm going to more speak to the men than the women, because I can't really think about what to even say other than be your authentic self. But for men, because I work with men too, it's like, it's okay. Like, I just want to like let them take a seat and just like take a breath and then regroup from there. Cause I just find like, the men I encounter is just, they're going and then their only rest happens when they're exhausted.
Yeah.
And so,
which isn't true rest.
No. It's exhaustion.
It's collapse.
Yeah. So, I would want to invite every human to the ability to stop and notice, because that's when all of your noticing can come back online, and take the time it takes, because your mind is going to be like, so like when you take a vacation and it takes like 3 days to finally be like, oh, time for lunch, like to just reset. That is good for everybody. And if that can be created within a relationship in terms of their rituals, Friday night, Sunday morning, let's do this together, let's just stop. I think everyone just needs to stop. And everyone stopped during COVID, but they didn't. This kept going.
Yeah.
Fear grew. Fear was more.
Yeah.
So it was that collapse and not rest. Some people chose to consciously rest. But I think that's the main thing, because, there's like women should do this and men should do that. I just feel like we're all freaking out. And the more of us that can just stop and go, well, what's good now? And what can I do now? And come back into that place of power. The only power we have is what's here now and how I see the right here and right now. And that's not delusional. That's not saying I don't acknowledge all the other things. It's just, that's where life is. Yeah. And I think I did a recent post where I said, if you feel like something's missing, and if your mind is moving faster than the moment, then you are missing out. That feeling that something's missing is you not being here in the moment. By trying to chase it out there, the cat with the tail. So just it's okay. That's all I have to say. Like, there's no big advice. Just like, everyone, you're okay. That sort of thing. Unless you're actually in survival mode, then do what you need to do. But if you're not, then everyone else can just take a break and relax, and then look at their life, and then look at who they want to be. And if everyone did that, that would be a very different world.
Very different world. Well, that's a good note to end on. Incidentally the total intention of the work that we're doing with TMIC and whole life architecture is to create communities and containers for men and women to come together and to create what's possible, to have the most important conversations we need to be having right now, and to create what's possible from a place of embodied self-awareness, stepping into our power, acknowledging us as the creator. And then it doesn't mean we don't have stuff to work through, which is why you're here, Jenna, and the help that you can provide people. Because, we do have this addictive quality that our brain has to say, yeah, but what? I haven't dealt with that, and be addicted to constantly going back to what's not working in the past and all this. So we have to address that, but we don't have to live in it. And we can dissolve it over time, and we can create something new for ourselves in this moment and for the future. And I think that this is a conversation we'll probably have ongoing here and there as we kind of continue to explore these things. But I really appreciate the chat today. This was fun.
Yeah. We never know where we're going to go.
We don't. And I love that. I actually prefer that sort of, well, these are conversations, not interviews. So they're supposed to be, and conversations have a sort of adaptive, evolving life of their own. So, well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us this episode and tuning in. And we'll see you again on another episode of the most important conversations about relationships. See you then.
That concludes this episode of the Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at tmicglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.